Welcome to my channel. I never thought a casual chat about experiments would lead to the most thrilling and terrifying week of my life. My name is Alex, and on the surface, I was just another college student, slogging through classes, internships, and the occasional social obligation. But beneath that ordinary exterior, I carried a secret that no one could ever suspect. I loved to crossdress. It wasn't just a hobby, it was a way to escape, a way to explore a side of myself that never saw the light of day. My wardrobe at home was my sanctuary, lined with neatly folded skirts, dresses, silky blouses, and shoes that clicked satisfyingly against the wooden floor when I walked in them. I never let anyone see this side of me. Not my friends, not my family, and definitely not Isabella, my girlfriend. She thought I was your typical guy, confident and practical. She had no idea how much I longed to feel delicate, feminine, and powerful all at the same time. I first discovered this part of myself in high school, when I accidentally stumbled into my older sister's closet. The silky fabric of a dress against my skin was electrifying, and the reflection in the mirror was mesmerizing. It wasn't vanity, it was discovery. Over the years, I honed my craft in private. Makeup, wigs, lingerie, it became a secret ritual I performed alone in my room at night, each session leaving me simultaneously exhilarated and guilty. But life has a way of complicating even the most controlled fantasies. College was supposed to be different. I had a schedule, responsibilities, and Isabella, a relationship I cherished more than I could articulate. Isabella was everything I admired: smart, confident, slightly mischievous, and impossibly stylish. She had this uncanny ability to notice details about people that no one else would. I often worried that if she ever suspected my secret, she might see me as weak or strange. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about the thrill of being seen differently, of slipping into the world of silk and lace while the rest of my life carried on untouched. It all started on a Tuesday afternoon. The campus was buzzing with the usual mid-semester energy, students hustling to labs, coffee in hand, professors hurriedly scribbling on whiteboards. I had just finished my chemistry class when my teacher, Dr. Valeria Serrano, called me over. She was brilliant and eccentric, with an eye for detail that made everyone slightly nervous. Her experiments were legendary, some groundbreaking, some questionable. I admired her mind, even if I wasn't always sure I trusted her methods. "Alex," she said, voice calm but commanding, "I need a volunteer for a special project. Something that might require a bit of creativity." Her sharp eyes seemed to pierce through me. "I think you're perfect for it." My stomach twisted. Something about the way she said creativity felt like an invitation and a warning at the same time. My heart raced with a mix of curiosity and fear. What could she possibly mean? Labs, chemicals, testing equipment. It sounded dangerous. And yet, there was something in her tone that made me want to say yes. Sure, Dr. Serrano. What do I need to do?" I asked, trying to sound confident, though my voice trembled slightly. "That's the spirit," she said, her lips curving into a smile that was equal parts amused and enigmatic. "We'll start in my lab after class. Be ready for an experience you won't forget." That night, as I walked back to my apartment, my mind swirled with possibilities. My relationship with Isabella had always been open in terms of trust, but never in this realm of fantasy and secret identity. Would this experiment somehow expose me? Or worse, would it force me to confront desires I'd always kept locked away? I tried to push the thought aside, but a shiver of anticipation ran down my spine. Home was small but cozy, a perfect hideaway for my clandestine activities. My room smelled faintly of lavender from the candle I always kept burning, a subtle luxury that I'd learned calmed my nerves. The shelves were lined with neatly organized clothing, wigs perched on stands, and a carefully arranged collection of makeup. Every item was a part of me, even though no one else could see it. I sat on the edge of my bed, fingers brushing over a silky blouse, imagining the thrill of wearing it in front of someone else. The idea made me flush. Alone, I could indulge in these fantasies safely. But tomorrow, under Dr. Serrano's watchful eye, everything might change. Isabella called that evening, and the warmth of her voice nearly distracted me from my racing thoughts. "Hey, are you coming out to dinner later?" she asked, teasing. "Or are you buried in your lab notes again?" I laughed, forcing casualness. I think I'll pass tonight. Got a lot to prepare for class. Truth was, I didn't know what to say. Could I tell her about Dr. Serrano's experiment? Could I tell her about the side of me that thrilled at the thought of slipping into dresses and heels? No. Not yet. Not ever, I hoped. The night passed in restless anticipation. I couldn't sleep, imagining the possibilities of what Dr. Serrano might have planned. And somewhere deep inside, a part of me thrilled at the thought of being transformed, tested, and perhaps, revealed. I didn't realize then how literal that transformation would be, or how it would unravel the careful balance of my life. By morning, I felt a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. My apartment felt unusually quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every heartbeat. I dressed quickly, careful to wear something neutral, nothing that could hint at my secret desires. I grabbed my bag and headed toward the chemistry lab, my mind spinning with what awaited me. This was supposed to be a simple experiment, a routine part of a class. Instead, it felt like stepping into a world where every rule I had lived by could be rewritten. And when I opened the lab door, Dr. Serrano was waiting, smiling knowingly. "Ready to begin?" she asked, as if she already knew the answer. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I wasn't sure I wanted to say no. The lab smelled faintly of chemicals and disinfectant, an antiseptic blend that never failed to make my stomach twist. Dr. Serrano stood in the middle of the room, her lab coat crisp and immaculate, yet there was something unusually theatrical in the way she held herself, almost like she was preparing to direct a scene. "Alex," she said, voice softening but still commanding, "today isn't about formulas or reactions. Today, it's about transformation. About understanding identity." My heart jumped. Transformation? Identity? The words made my pulse spike and a strange thrill surge through me. I thought I knew what I was getting into, but something in her gaze told me I was about to enter uncharted territory. She led me to a corner of the lab that had been sectioned off by heavy curtains. Behind them were tables covered with items that made my breath catch, dresses of silk and satin, delicate shoes with impossibly high heels, wigs of every color, and palettes of makeup that looked as if they were made to summon entirely new faces. My mind raced. Was this really part of the experiment, or had I stumbled into some private fantasy that only Dr. Serrano was aware of? "Today, Alex, you're going to experience what it feels like to inhabit a different form," she said, her fingers gliding over a pastel pink dress. "Not just the clothes. The body. The presence. But there's a condition: you must commit fully. Half-hearted attempts will fail. Are you ready?" I swallowed hard. My inner voice screamed both yes and no at the same time. Every fiber of me wanted to retreat, yet another part, the part one had hidden for years, ached to be unleashed. I'm ready," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She smiled and gestured to a large mirror. "The first step is preparation. Choose an outfit." My eyes darted nervously across the table. Satin skirts, silk blouses, lace stockings. Each piece seemed to beckon me with its own promise. My hands trembled as I reached for a soft, flowing dress in pale lavender, the fabric cool against my fingers. I had never worn anything like it in front of another person. My pulse raced, a mixture of fear and excitement coiling tight in my chest. Dr. Serrano handed me a wig, long, chestnut brown with soft curls. "This will help you transition. Put it on." As I adjusted the wig over my head, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I barely recognized myself. The face staring back was softer, more delicate, framed by cascading curls. My hands shook slightly as I reached for a bottle of foundation and a palette of eyeshadows. Every brush stroke, every touch of powder and color, was a thrill and a terror combined. It felt real. Too real. "Breathe," Dr. Serrano instructed gently. "Feel it. Don't fight it." I did as she said, letting the unfamiliar sensations wash over me. The way the dress hugged my body, the way the heels forced me to shift my posture, the subtle but powerful difference in the way I carried myself. With each movement, a new layer of me emerged, a side that had lived only in shadows and whispered fantasies. Hours passed in a blur. The experiment wasn't about chemistry or biology. It was about observation, about how identity could be manipulated, molded, and performed. Dr. Serrano watched intently as I practiced walking, speaking, even sitting with the precise grace of the persona she had envisioned. Every step felt simultaneously natural and forced, exhilarating and humiliating. My chest tightened, not just from the corset and dress, but from the raw vulnerability of being seen, truly seen, in a way I had never allowed anyone. Then came the first test. She asked me to interact with a recording device she had set up, simulating social situations. I had to introduce myself, answer questions, and maintain the persona I was now inhabiting. My voice, softer and slightly higher-pitched, sounded strange to my own ears. My hands, delicate and gloved in lace, shook as I gestured naturally. Dr. Serrano's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "You're doing very well," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But there's a deeper layer. Confidence without vulnerability is meaningless. You must embrace both." I nodded, though my stomach churned. Vulnerability. That was the part one had always feared. To crossdress in private was one thing. To be guided, observed, tested. It was exposure in its purest, most terrifying form. A sudden sound made me jump, a knock at the lab door. My heart thudded against my ribs. "Who?" I started to ask, but Dr. Serrano waved me off. "Ignore it. This is your moment. Focus." But I couldn't. My mind flickered to Isabella. What if she found out? What if someone else saw me like this? The fear mingled with the thrill, creating a cocktail of emotion that left me trembling, yet strangely exhilarated. Dr. Serrano handed me a pair of elegant heels. "These will complete your transformation. Wear them. Walk." I stepped into the shoes, wincing slightly as my toes adjusted. The world seemed different, taller, more precarious, more alive. Each step required concentration, precision, and courage. By the time I managed a few careful strides, my reflection in the mirror no longer looked like me, but somehow it felt like me too. "You're ready for the next stage," Dr. Serrano said, her voice low and promising. "But this is where the real challenge begins, sustaining the persona under pressure, with stakes you cannot yet imagine." She left me alone for a moment, and I allowed myself to breathe. The excitement coursing through me was overwhelming. I touched my face, feeling the unfamiliar softness of my applied makeup, the wig curling against my skin, the dress flowing around me. I felt beautiful, terrified, exposed, alive. Minutes later, she returned with a small box, locked with a delicate clasp. "Inside this," she said, "are the tools that will truly test you. You must use them carefully, wisely, and without hesitation. Are you prepared?" I nodded, even though a knot of fear tightened in my stomach. This was no longer a playful exploration. This was an experiment. A challenge. A test of how far I could go, and how much I was willing to risk. Dr. Serrano smiled, and for the first time, I realized the experiment wasn't just about crossdressing. It was about control. About power. About surrender. And somehow I knew that by the time it was over, nothing about me would ever be the same again. The small box Dr. Serrano placed on the table felt heavier than it looked. I hesitated before opening it, my fingers brushing against the delicate lock. Inside were items that seemed innocuous at first: a compact mirror, a set of small brushes, perfume vials, a pair of gloves. But something about the way Dr. Serrano had arranged them made me feel like I was holding the key to an entirely new world. "You must learn to inhabit this persona fully," she said. "Not just the clothes, not just the makeup, but the way you carry yourself. Every glance, every gesture, every breath matters. Even the smallest slip could compromise the experiment." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. Compromise? Could she mean exposure? Or something else, more personal? The thought made my pulse quicken. I had always been careful, always hidden. Yet here I was, deliberately putting myself on display, surrendering to her guidance. I spent the next hour alone practicing. I adjusted the dress, smoothed the fabric over my hips, and straightened the wig. I moved slowly at first, hesitant and awkward, then gradually with more confidence, letting the heels guide my posture, the dress sway with each step. Every reflection in the mirror reminded me of both who I was and who I could be. My pulse hammered as I experimented with expressions, shy smiles, coy glances, subtle gestures that felt alien yet intoxicating. A sudden noise made me jump, a chair scraping across the floor in the main lab area. My heart thudded painfully. Dr. Serrano's eyes were on me instantly. "Ignore it," she said softly. "Distraction is part of the process. Focus on yourself." I nodded, though my fingers shook as I picked up the compact mirror. With trembling hands, I applied lipstick, the red color shocking against my pale skin. I caught a glimpse of myself, Alex but not Alex, a new version of me staring back, delicate and daring, vulnerable and bold at once. The thrill was intoxicating. I felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement, a delicious tension that tightened my chest and made my limbs tremble. The next test was harder. Dr. Serrano instructed me to read a short passage aloud, projecting a persona of confidence, poise, and femininity. My voice cracked the first time, soft and uncertain. She corrected me gently, guiding me through tone, pacing, and inflection. The process was exhausting but exhilarating. Each correction made me more aware of the duality I carried, the person I had always been, hidden and private, and the persona I was learning to inhabit under her watchful gaze. Hours slipped by, blurring together. At one point, I realized I was sweating beneath the dress, my palms clammy despite the controlled movements. But the thrill was addictive. I felt alive in a way I never had before, hyper-aware of every movement, every sensation, every heartbeat. Then came the first true test of suspense. Dr. Serrano placed a small digital timer on the table. "You will remain in your persona," she said, "for 30 minutes. No interruptions. If you falter, the experiment ends." 30 minutes felt like an eternity. My legs ached in the heels, my chest felt tight from the corset, and my hands trembled slightly as I gestured. Every noise in the lab, a dropped pen, a distant footstep, made me flinch. And yet, as the minutes passed, I began to feel powerful, present, exposed, yes, but also strangely liberated. The duality I had always feared became a source of energy. Just when I began to relax, a shadow flickered across the room. My pulse raced. I froze, clutching the dress at my waist. The lab door creaked slightly, then silence. I could almost feel my reflection in the mirror watching me, two versions of myself colliding in a single moment. My mind raced. Was it Dr. Serrano returning, or had someone else come in? "Focus," her voice whispered from behind me. "Every moment matters." I forced my breathing to steady, adjusting my posture, reminding myself that this was part of the experiment. Yet fear clung to me, mingling with excitement, creating a heady cocktail of emotions. I realized that the thrill of being caught, or nearly caught, was part of what made this so intoxicating. My secret, my private indulgence, was now elevated into something dangerous, something public, and the adrenaline was addictive. The final task of the day came unexpectedly. Dr. Serrano handed me a small, ornate hand mirror. "Look at yourself carefully," she said. "Describe everything you see, not just your appearance but what you feel." I stared into the reflection, my heart hammering. The dress clung perfectly, the wig framed my face just right, and the makeup accentuated my features delicately. But more than that, I felt transformed. I felt the thrill of exposure, the terror of being discovered, and the addictive allure of inhabiting a persona that was both foreign and familiar. I feel powerful," I admitted, voice trembling. "And scared. And alive." Dr. Serrano's eyes gleamed. "Exactly. Transformation is never simple. It is always a blend of fear and desire, vulnerability and strength. And remember, Alex, this is only the beginning. The real test comes when the world outside the lab enters this experiment." Her words left me trembling. I realized then that the boundaries I had carefully maintained, between my secret life and my public self, between desire and discretion, were slipping. And somewhere deep inside, I knew that once this experiment progressed further, nothing would ever be the same. By the third day of the experiment, the lab had become a strange second home, a world entirely apart from the one I had known. The dress I wore that morning was a deep burgundy, flowing and heavy, paired with stilettos that made each step a test of balance and concentration. My reflection in the mirror had become both comforting and terrifying, a reminder of who I was and who I was becoming. Dr. Serrano observed me with a clinical intensity, noting every twitch, every glance, every flicker of hesitation. "Alex," she said, "today we take it further. The experiment is no longer confined to the lab. It's time to test your ability to maintain the persona in unpredictable circumstances." My stomach turned over. Outside the lab? I had been carefully hidden from the world. The thought of being seen, really seen, sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. And yet, a thrill I couldn't deny surged within me. I nodded, though my hands shook slightly as I adjusted the wig. "You'll begin with a short outing," she explained. "A cafe across campus. You must maintain the persona at all times. No breaks, no excuses. Any lapse will have consequences." I swallowed hard. Consequences. My heart raced with equal parts fear and excitement. Stepping into the cafe, I immediately felt the world react differently. Heads turned, people stared longer than usual, whispers brushed past me. I felt both exposed and empowered, the sensation intoxicating, dangerous, and utterly new. A group of students glanced my way, their laughter muffled behind cups of coffee. My pulse hammered as I straightened, forcing myself to walk with deliberate grace, heels clicking on the floor. Each step was an act of bravery, each glance a test of control. I felt vulnerable, yet powerful, thrilled by the secret tension simmering beneath the surface. Then it happened. A voice from behind, "Alex? Is that you?" I froze. Heart in my throat. It was Mark, a classmate who had always been curious about me, sharp-eyed and relentless. He stared wide-eyed, and my mind raced. Could I bluff? Could I hide it? Dr. Serrano's voice, calm in my mind, reminded me, confidence under pressure. I forced a smile, careful, calculated. Hi Mark. Just trying something new." He squinted, suspicious, but didn't push further. The relief washed over me, but only briefly. My hands were clammy, my legs quivering slightly from the heels and tension. Returning to the lab felt like stepping back into safety, but I knew the real test wasn't over. Back in the lab, Dr. Serrano had prepared the next challenge. A full-length mirror, a small platform, and a timer. "Alex," she said, "now you must demonstrate control over both form and emotion. Speak, move, act as your persona under timed pressure." I stepped onto the platform, heels wobbling slightly. My chest tightened, my pulse pounding. Each movement had to be deliberate, graceful, controlled. I spoke softly, carefully, but with a poise I hadn't thought I possessed. Each gesture, each tilt of the head, each blink of the eyes had to feel natural, authentic. Then, an unexpected obstacle. The lab door opened, and a janitor walked in, pausing mid-step, staring at me. Panic flared instantly. I froze, clutching the sides of the dress, my mind racing. Dr. Serrano's eyes sparkled with something unreadable. "Continue," she whispered. I forced myself to move, to speak, to embody the persona. The janitor's stare lingered for a full 30 seconds before he muttered something under his breath and left. My knees trembled, adrenaline coursing through every fiber of my being. I had survived the encounter, but barely. Dr. Serrano clapped softly. "Excellent. Most would have faltered. You're learning the balance between fear and control. That is power, Alex." And yet, her gaze sharpened. "There is one final test." I swallowed hard, nerves and anticipation twisting inside me. The final test. I had no idea what it could entail, but the tension in the room was suffocating. "Alex," she said, holding up a small, elegant mask, "this represents duality. You must wear it and interact with others in the lab as your persona, but with limited visibility. You will be judged on poise, control, and adaptability. Can you maintain composure under obstruction?" I hesitated but nodded. My hands shook as I placed the mask over my eyes. The world shifted, blurred, uncertain, amplified. Every sound felt sharper, every step riskier. I felt unsteady, vulnerable, exposed, but I forced myself to walk forward. Minutes passed like hours. The mask obscured my sight, but I relied on muscle memory, reflex, and the lessons Dr. Serrano had instilled. Each movement felt precarious, each glance over my shoulder was a calculated risk. My reflection in the partial mirrors around the lab distorted and multiplied my image, creating a dizzying effect. I felt like a doll, controlled, observed, and manipulated, but powerful in my performance. Then came the ultimate test of suspense, the unexpected arrival of Isabella. My heart stopped entirely. She had arrived earlier than expected, a soft knock at the lab door, her voice calling out my name. I froze. Panic surged, bile rising in my throat. Dr. Serrano's gaze was steady, unflinching, almost predatory. Do not falter, she whispered. Isabella's footsteps drew closer. My mind raced, searching for an escape, a lie, a cover story, but none existed. I was trapped in heels, in dress, in persona, with a mask that blurred my vision. The moment she stepped inside, I caught a glimpse, just enough, of her eyes widening, a flash of shock and confusion. My pulse thundered in my ears. Alex? She asked, voice wavering slightly. Is that really you? Time slowed. Every second stretched into an eternity. My body felt simultaneously fragile and electrified. The mask distorted my own perception, but I forced myself to respond in the persona I had cultivated over days of intense practice. My voice was soft, melodic, precise. My hands moved gracefully. Every tilt of the head, every gesture, every step was a conscious act of survival. Isabella's eyes lingered, scanning, questioning, and, unbelievably, hesitating. The tension between exposure and control, fear and thrill, had reached its peak. I realized then that this was more than an experiment. It was a crucible, a trial by fire of identity, desire, and secrecy. And then, the symbolic moment arrived. As I moved closer to speak, the mask slipped slightly, revealing part of my face beneath. My wig shifted dangerously, a curl falling across my cheek. Time seemed to freeze. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears. Would she recognize me fully? Would she understand or reject the duality she was witnessing? The room seemed to constrict, the mirrors reflecting my doubled selves, my dress flowing, my heels precarious. My heart raced as I braced for the moment that would define everything: acceptance, rejection, exposure, or revelation. Dr. Serrano's hand rested lightly on my shoulder, a silent signal. The test was complete, but the consequences were only beginning. Time seemed to stretch in the lab, each second heavier than the last. Isabella's eyes were wide, fixed on me with a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and, dare I hope, curiosity. The mask had slipped just enough to reveal part of my face, the wig slightly askew, the dress flowing perfectly around me. Every detail screamed both me and not me, a tension I had never experienced so vividly. Alex. Her voice wavered, soft, uncertain. Is that really you? My heart slammed against my ribs. My mind raced, searching for words that could bridge the impossible distance between secrecy and exposure. But the persona I had worked so hard to cultivate, the soft voice, the measured gestures, the delicate poise, took over. I stepped forward cautiously, heels clicking against the floor, and forced a gentle smile. Yes, I whispered, voice melodic, careful. It's me, sort of. Isabella's brow furrowed, her lips parting slightly. Sort of, she repeated. The tone was incredulous, but not entirely judgmental. Her gaze flickered over the dress, the wig, the makeup, and then back to my eyes. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the internal struggle as she tried to reconcile the Alex she knew with the one standing in front of her. Dr. Serrano remained silent, watching from the corner, her expression unreadable. The weight of her presence made the room feel smaller, more charged. It was as if she had orchestrated this moment deliberately, to push me to the absolute edge. I don't understand, Isabella admitted, stepping closer. Why are you dressed like this? Every nerve in my body screamed. Panic mingled with the thrill I had felt all week, the fear of exposure, the adrenaline, the undeniable excitement of being seen in this vulnerable, intimate state. I wanted to explain, to confess, to tell her everything about my secret, my desires, my hidden identity, but the words stuck in my throat. Dr. Serrano's voice broke the tension, calm and deliberate. Alex has been participating in an experiment, a test of transformation, identity, and control. What you see is not deception, Isabella. It is an exploration. Isabella's eyes widened further. Experiment. Her voice was sharp now, a mixture of astonishment and a touch of anger. You mean, you let her dress you like this? Yes, I whispered, stepping a little closer, trying to gauge her reaction. I wanted to explore this side of myself. But I didn't mean to hide it from you. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the lab equipment and the soft rustle of my dress as I shifted nervously. My fingers clutched the hem, the sensation grounding me even as my heart raced. Every step, every breath felt amplified, heightened by the knowledge that my secret was teetering on the edge of discovery. Isabella's gaze softened slightly, but a shadow of uncertainty remained. I don't know what to say, she admitted, her voice low. I need a moment to process this. I nodded, barely able to speak. My chest was tight, adrenaline still pumping. I wanted her to understand, to accept, to see the thrill and fear, the vulnerability and empowerment intertwined in this persona I had created. But I also knew that this was just the beginning. There was no guarantee of acceptance, no certainty that my secret wouldn't shatter everything. Dr. Serrano stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. This is precisely the point of the experiment, Alex, she said softly, her eyes flicking to Isabella. To navigate exposure, fear, and identity under pressure. How you handle this moment will define the next phase. And remember, fear and thrill often coexist. That is the essence of transformation. Isabella's eyes flicked back to me, scanning every detail. I could see the conflict in her expression, the mix of confusion, curiosity, and cautious intrigue. She took a tentative step forward, then paused. I need to think, she whispered. I'll come back later. And just like that, she turned and left the lab, the door clicking softly behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. I sank into a chair, hands shaking, mind racing. Part of me felt relief. Isabella hadn't screamed, hadn't rejected me outright, but another part felt a deep, gnawing fear. What would she think? Would she ever see me the same way again? Dr. Serrano approached, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Well done, she said, her voice calm, almost satisfied. You survived the ultimate test. But remember, Alex, this is only the beginning. Identity, secrecy, and desire are never simple. The real world awaits, and your choices now will determine everything. I nodded silently, too overwhelmed to speak. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, the persona I had cultivated, the feminine elegance, the delicate grace, it was all still there. Yet now it carried a weight I hadn't felt before, the knowledge that my secret was on the verge of exposure, the awareness that Isabella's reaction could change everything, and the thrill that I had tasted something intoxicating, dangerous, and irrevocable. The screen fades here, leaving the audience with the tension unresolved. Will Isabella accept Alex's secret side? Will Dr. Serrano's experiment push him further into a world he cannot return from? Or will the thrill of exposure lead to disaster? What would you do if you were in Alex's position? Comment below and let us know your thoughts. Could you balance secrecy, desire, and fear under the ultimate test of identity?